It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
We'll punch you in the nose for 60 minutes with a relentless competitive attitude.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs and have some fun.
Welcome to the Thursday edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Thanks for being with us. I'm Paul Dottino. He is Super Bowl champion punter Jeff Feagles, and we'll be with you for about the next hour, or maybe a little less than that, to talk about New York Giants football. But more importantly, we want to remind you, you can find an archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcasts. Now, today, we are not taking phone calls. We've told you all week we are doing taped programs. We are unable to hook up the phone lines for those phone calls, but we are continuing our team previews of the Giants' opponents as we go around to the summer camps and find out what the Giants are likely to face during the 2021 season. So, Jeff, today we'll be talking about the New Orleans Saints, a team that will play the Giants on October 3rd. As the Giants renew what has been, I guess, a one-sided affair over the years. I remember that game when Breeze and Eli Manning threw for a combined 13 touchdown passes in the Superdome. Breeze had 7. Eli had 6. That's not been a good place for the Giants to play over the course of time.
Well, it's tough for any team to go there and play in New Orleans, no matter what. I mean, that's a tough place to go, tough crowds, loud, everything. So there's been some crazy games for the Giants. I was part of one of them. The old Joe Horn, remember that? The phone in the what was the field goal?
Yeah, underneath the uprights. Yes, he had it hidden there in the padding.
Oh, my goodness. So, one thing, I love to play in New Orleans when I went there because it was in a dome, as you know. But, for most people, it is a tough place to play. But, you look at this Saints team coming off of what they did last year and now losing a Hall of Famer in Drew Brees, and they're going to have to transition to Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. I mean, it's going to be interesting. But, Payton, he's a guy that can coach. He can coach like the best of them. And I think that he'll put that team together. They have, some things missing on defense too, but collectively there will be a team that will compete. They always do. And I think that Sean Payton finds a way to win. And he is very good at drawing up offenses with what he has. And that's what he's going to have to do this year, Paul. So the Giants got a good chance to come off with a victory against this team because they're just not as good as they were last year.
Well, they certainly do have some transitioning going on in New Orleans. Now, speaking of that ball club, well, Jeff and I earlier had an opportunity to talk to Kristian Garic. He is the Saints pre- and post-game host for WWL Radio. And Jeff began by asking him about that key position on offense.
I think the biggest concern will be the loss of quarterback Drew Brees. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen this offseason and kind of what the roster is shaping up, and really the biggest concern that I said about Drew Brees and what the quarterback position is going to look like going forward.
Well, this offseason we haven't really seen a whole lot just because we haven't had a lot of access. They've done, the Saints have done a lot more classroom, weightlifting, not so much your traditional mini camp, because of the pandemic, and, they're taking a different approach this year, but Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill are at the center of everybody's focus because Drew Brees is retired, and everybody's wondering how that competition is going to shake out. Jameis Winston has rededicated himself to the game. I love where he's at in terms of the work ethic and stuff he's putting in off the field. And then you have to a degree in Taysom Hill. He was 3-1 last year as a starter when Drew Brees was injured. So it's going to come down to that battle, and I think that'll be the focus of training camp once it gets underway. And I'm excited to see how it plays out. One way or the other, though, you're still going to see Taysom Hill on the field in some form or fashion, regardless of who wins the job. He's a unique weapon that Sean Payton can scheme up. And regardless of who the quarterback is, it's going to be a different offense. And what I mean by that is Sean Payton's really good at designing plays in an offense around a quarterback that has a different skill set. Look what he did in Dallas when he was the offensive coordinator under Bill Parcells with Quincy Carter. I mean, he got Quincy Carter throwing for 3,000 yards and made the playoffs. So he's really adept at playing to a quarterback's strength. I mean, when Drew Brees arrived, he designed the offense around him and what he does well and what it's hard to believe that Drew has some limitations, but he did. But the way Sean Payton came up with the scheme, it played to his strengths and minimized his shortcomings. So, I think you can expect the same thing, whether it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. He's going to have an offense that's tailored to one of those two players and go from there. I mean, you have your base offense. I mean, Jeff, you know that well. Paul, you know that well, that you're going to have your base offense, but you're going to have some things in there that are designed to highlight a player's attributes at quarterback, and whether it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill, that they do well. And that's why if it were any other coach or any other player, I'd have some trepidation. But Sean knows how to scheme those players up and put them in positions to have success. And I think that either one of those two guys are going to have success because Sean is going to be able to scheme that up and design plays around them and their strengths and their weaknesses are going to be minimized to a degree. And it'll be fascinating to watch.
If I can follow up for just a second, is it as simple as knowing that Hill is more of a guy who's going to want to run with the ball some, and Winston's more of a pocket guy who's going to want to throw the ball long downfield? Is it really that simple in terms of the biggest difference between the two?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Taysom's mobile. He likes being physical. He likes, putting the ball in his hand, and certainly, his legs are an attribute that he can thrive off of. But at the end of the day, though, nothing's changed with this game, and I don't think it ever will. Is as the mobile quarterback has become the in vogue thing, and I say mobile, I mean I'm talking about Pat Mahomes kind of guy that can move a little bit. You got other quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, but you got to make plays from the pocket. You got to be able to. This game isn't going to change that much where, you're not going to have to make plays from the pocket as a passer. It's always going to be that way. Sure, you can extend plays and you can move around a little bit. And that helps, but it's all about what you can do from the pocket. I mean, we just saw a guy in Tom Brady who's a statue in the pocket win a Super Bowl. Because that's what the quarterback position ultimately boils down to. And Jameis Winston's a guy with a big arm, and he can move too, but he's going to want to stay in the pocket and make throws. And the same applies for Taysom Hill. As mobile as he is, he's going to have to be able to throw with anticipation, something that he didn't do well last year, filling in for Drew Brees. He didn't throw well with anticipation. So, I think that is an apt comparison in terms of a guy at Taysom Hill that wants to get out of the pocket or wants to utilize his legs, and Jameis Winston who's got the big arm that wants to stretch the field.
Obviously, this team is. I mentioned earlier about their transition. They lost 8 starters and actually even 14 players who were in the playoffs last year that were playing in those games. So a big transition on offense. You talk about Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray. Those are your 2 running backs. When you talk about passing, I know that they get their running backs, especially Kamara, involved in the passing game, but, the receivers, you lost Emmanuel Sanders and Jared Cook. Tell me a little bit about how you feel they're going to be able to replace kind of those guys and where the production in the passing game is going to come with these players.
Well, as my co-host, Bobby Hebert pointed out, at tight end, it's inexperience. You got Adam Troutman, Garic Griffin, Ethan Wolf, and all 3 of those players are good players, but they're a little inexperienced in terms of actual game time. And Garic Griffin has gotten a couple of games on the active roster and playing time. Adam Troutman's the rookie out of Dayton. third-round pick. Ethan Wolf is the veteran, the journeyman that has been around for a little while, but hasn't necessarily been a standout. So they're a little thin there in terms of experience. And then at wide receiver, you got Mike Thomas, obviously, but outside of that, who's going to be the number 2 behind him? Is it going to be Traquan Smith? Is it going to be Callaway? I mean, it's unknown in terms of who's going to be the complement to Mike Thomas at wide receiver. And like as you pointed out, there's a number of ways that Sean Payton and the Saints have offensively operated, even without a true number 2 wide receiver. They get a number of guys involved in a passing game, whether it's tight end, wide receiver, running back, Ty Montgomery, Alvin Kamara. I mean, there's a number of ways they can do it, but to sit up here and say that this is a wide receiver core that rivals the likes of Marcus Colston, Lance Moore, and Robert Meacham is a stretch. I mean, those 3 guys had proven themselves, and they were legitimate weapons. So right now, on the outside at wide receiver, Mike Thomas is established. Everybody else is still trying to find their footing, so to speak.
I got to mention the offensive line a little bit, because I think of all the offense, when you look at how things are put together, that offensive line is probably the strongest part of that offense, with all the 5 starters returning. So that'll do wonders for Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill and some of those other guys. And it's always nice to have your starters return on your offensive line. That's for sure.
Yeah, look, that's clearly the strength of this team. Is their offensive line play, in particular tackles with Ryan Ramczyk and Teron Armstead. You got Andrews Pete inside. You got Cesar Ruiz that's probably going to play center this year, and Eric McCoy, the real McCoy at guard. That's why they have a chance this year. That's why when, you say, well, gosh, how are they going to have success without Drew Brees? It's because of their offensive line. They've done a good job of keeping that intact, and you know this, you guys both know this, that if you're strong up front in the trenches, then you got a chance. And I think that's why the Saints are going to have a chance this year. The over and under win totals at 9.5, and that's largely, I think, because of the offensive line. And it's one of the best offensive lines in football. And whoever's quarterback, that's going to help them. But I think you're going to see more of a running attack. You're going to see, I think you're going to see more runs than we traditionally saw under Drew Brees. You're going to see a rushing attack being implemented more so than we have in the past with that offensive line, and then we transition to a quarterback, whether it's Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston.
If they do that, do you see carries being split a particular way between Kamara and Murray? And I don't know if Montgomery or Washington even figure into this, or do you think they might just kind of make Kamara the bell cow?
No, they have to split the carries. I mean, Alvin Kamara's got great balance. He's got better power than people give him credit for. He's stronger than maybe you think. But you got to split those, because Alvin Kamara's going to be heavily involved in a passing game as well. So you're going to split those carries between him and Latavius Murray. And heck, who knows? They might bring in a third running back. They've done that before, where they split 3 running backs. So in 2009, they had Pierre Thomas, Reggie Bush, and Mike Bell. All 3 of those guys played significant roles in the running game. So I think you could see something similar to that here in the future. But I don't think you put it on Alvin Kamara just because how involved he's going to be in a passing game, but also, man, it's a long season. And then you tack on 17 games, and I don't think Alvin Kamara's meant to carry the football 25 times in a game. I just think that's a stretch.
Kristian, with the New Orleans Saints, I think a lot of people always focus on the offense because of Sean Payton and Drew Brees and Kamara, and the defense is kind of shoved under the rug a little bit. But when you look at the transition the defense is going to have to make this year, they've lost a lot of players too on that side of the football, especially Trey Hendrickson, who went to the Bengals in free agency. That's 13.5 sacks out of that defensive the edge rusher, and you got Cam Jordan who's getting a little bit, long in the tooth, but still can produce. What do you see defensively? Are there going to be major changes there? Talk a little bit about what you think the strengths and the weaknesses are on that side of the football coming up this season.
Well, you got a hole at cornerback with Janoris Jenkins gone in Tennessee. He's a cap casualty. Malcolm Brown's in Jacksonville along the interior defensive line. Sheldon Rankins is gone. You mentioned Trey Hendrickson. It's a defense that's in flux, so to speak. You got guys that are going to have to come in. Paulson and Debo, they drafted him in the 3rd round out of Stanford at cornerback. So it's a defense that I think has some holes. Let's be honest. Demario Davis at linebacker has been a big addition to the Saints and a big leader. And but where are the sacks going to come from? You pointed it out. I mean, they've got Marcus Davenport, who's in his 4th year, who, when he's on the field, is a nightmare. But he hasn't been on the field very often. He's been injured. So, you got Carl Granderson, the undrafted guy. You added Passanio. I can't remember his first name, but the fact that I can pronounce his last name is a miracle.
Sounds like me.
Yeah, so they brought him in from the Chiefs, and they hope to get some production out of him in terms of pass rusher. But it's a defense that I think you got to find an answer. Who's going to be the cornerback opposite of Marshawn Lattimore? Oh, by the way, could potentially be facing a suspension because of the offseason that he had and the gun charge that he caught up there in Cleveland, and you don't know whether he's going to be out for a game, 2, 4, what have you. So it's a defense that has some question marks. And Dennis Allen's a great defensive coordinator, which, by the way, I think should get an opportunity to be a head coach again here soon. I think that fit with the Raiders was just not the right fit at all. That's why he failed the first time. But it's one of those deals where Dennis Allen is pretty adept as well of coming up with his own schemes to having players in the right position that may not be as talented as you would like. But I think the loss of Jackrabbit, Janoris Jenkins, is going to be one that they might regret. But they can't. They had nothing. They had no choice. They had to get on the salary cap. He was a cap casualty, but that cat can play. Janoris Jenkins can flat out play. And when he was added to this defense a couple of years ago, you saw them make the transition pretty quickly into being. I mean, they last year they were one of the best defenses in the NFL. I mean, they were the top defense in the league for a good 6-week stretch. I mean, they were that good. I don't think they're going to be as good this year, but I still expect them to be pretty solid.
I want to ask you about the linebacker unit because we remember from some years ago the Jets had Demario Davis. The Saints have had him for a number of years now. He's a tackling machine, puts up regularly over 100 every single year. I guess he's the grandpappy of the defense, and he's got to be the glue. And then Pete Werner's an interesting guy, second-round draft pick who coming out this year was ranked pretty highly. I think a lot of people had their eyes on him.
Yeah, Demario Davis, I don't understand how the heck he ever got out of the Jets organization, but then again, it's the Jets, so I understand it. And then the Browns, he was with Cleveland for a while, but he's been, as you put it, he's been the glue of the Saints defense. He's been outstanding, a great leader, a great football player. And Pete Werner, you add him to the mix out of Ohio State. The linebacking core is different than what we're used to seeing in the NFL in general. You're in a 2 linebacker look more often than not these days in the NFL. And when they lost Quan Alexander last year due to Achilles injury, I thought the defense took a step back. They really had it going. Look at Tampa Bay. Look at what was the big reasons why they won a Super Bowl? Their linebacking group was outstanding. Devin White, you got what's the cat's name? Is Levante David. You know, those two guys were outstanding for Tampa Bay. So you're really in a nickel defense about 65% of the time anyway. So that traditional 4-3 linebacker is kind of a thing of the past. Pete Warner can run, he can cover, and I think that's a big part of why they drafted him in the second round, because so often you're asking your linebackers to cover a tight end, cover a running back out of the backfield, and I'm sure you guys have noticed that, man, these linebackers look more like safeties these days than they do linebackers.
You know, when I look at this defense, as you had mentioned, Kristian, you know, a lot of things to fill, a lot of holes to fill from the people that have lost in free agency and salary dumps and things like that. But, you know, collectively, I think that this defense has some playmakers and can keep the Saints in some games, and arguably is going to be a tough division again with Tampa. What do you see as a whole for this team going this year? Do you see them making the playoffs this year? I'm going to put you on the spot, thinking that they can compete with who is it? Excuse me, Tampa Bay. I don't know how I forgot that name, but where do you see the Saints finishing up in this division this year?
I think they're a wild card team this year. Tampa's clearly the I think, as the defending champions, they're the front runner to win the South, even though the Saints have done the last 4 years. I think that they're second in the division, and I think they're a wild card type of team. But man, I mean, you know, 17 games, you're still breaking in a new quarterback, whether it's Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston. You got a lot of transition on this team. So, I think 10 wins is a good benchmark for them. If they get 10 wins, then I think that, you know, that's about the expectation. But man, I know this, the Who Dat Nation and the Saints fans are going to forever remember the no call and the opportunity the Saints had in 2011 and 2018 when they felt like that, you know, that was their years to go make another run, and it didn't happen. So, now you're without your Hall of Fame quarterback in Drew Brees, and, let's see how it all plays out, because it's the NFL, and this time of year, everybody has hope. Every franchise has hope. Every fan base thinks that this is their year. But, you know, you got to play it out on the field, and this will be, I think, the most interesting training camp under Sean Payton, because there's so many storylines, there's so many ifs and buts and what ifs. So let's see it all play out in training camp. I think when you look at it here in June, they should be a playoff team, but man, the NFL is a strange business and weird in a lot of ways, so you just never know.
You know, I can't believe we got Jeff Feagles on the line here, and he doesn't ask about special teams. I mean, that's got to be a first on this program. But I got to bring up Deontay Harris, who's certainly a heck of a return guy, and Will Lutz is a very, very good field goal kicker. How do you see their special teams shaking out? Is that a strength, Kristian? Is that one of the reasons why you think they can overcome the questions on defense?
Certainly, they got a return man that can change a game. And they got a field goal kicker that can win you a game. They lost some coverage ability this offseason with Justin Hardy now vacating and being gone to another team. He was a big-time coverage guy on special teams. But they've got other guys that they feel like they can plug in there that can cover as well. And I think that the special teams group as a whole is still solid, very solid. They're breaking in a new punter, Blake Gilliquin from Penn State, who last year they stashed on the practice squad behind Thomas Morstead, who was a big part of this team for over a decade, and I think can still punt in this league, but Blake Gilliquin last year was, if you ask me, I think he won the job last year over Thomas Morstead. So it's another big leg they got back there. And, people, unless you have a great punter, unless you've experienced a great punter like Thomas Morstead was, man, that's a weapon. It's a weapon that is underrated because you can flip the field. You can pin teams in deep in their own territory, especially with the different styles that they're using these days with the Aussie style punting. So, I'm interested to see if Blake Gilliquin can be the weapon that Thomas Morstead was when he was in the Saints uniform. Thomas Morstead used to launch some absolute rockets off the right leg of number 6, and it changed the field position often for the Saints. And it's a weapon that I think goes underappreciated in the NFL. So it'll be big to see how Blake Gilliquin does as a punter for the Saints.
Final question from me.
Oh,
go ahead.
Music to my ears.
Oh, of course it is. Of course it is. It's a symphony to you, Feagles.
Honestly,
anytime anybody comes on this time and tells us that punting position is underappreciated, then you're at the top of my list as interviews. That's for sure, Kristian. You can come on this show anytime you want.
Well, but if you think about it, man, the fans don't realize it, right? It's just hard for them to understand just what a weapon that can be, and how you can change field position and get out of jams. And I think it's you got punters and then you got field position changers, and man, that's just such a difference in a lot of ways that some fans don't understand and don't realize how big of a weapon it can be, because there are other punters in the league that can't do that, and you see a defense pay for it every once in a while.
Yeah, definitely. And the punting is part of the defense, is a defensive position. And when you talk about this defense like you just did, the best thing you can have is a good punter when your defense is a little suspect. So they can put them in good positions. Absolutely.
Final question, Kristian. This is a Saints team that's won 49 games during the regular season over the last 4 years, and of course has suffered heartbreak in the postseason, obviously not by their own volition, but by circumstances out of their control. How is it that Sean Payton has been able to keep the emotional and mental resiliency to keep this team in contention year after year, and how long can he keep doing it until they've got to get the brass ring or it just falls apart?
Well, he's a great leader, first off. He's an ever-evolving coach. He's different than he was in 2006 when he took the job. He's evolved with the players and with the changing of the times of the league. And he's an immense leader. He knows his team. He knows what kind of gets his team going. And it's different year in and year out. That team's going to be different than it was last year, but he'll be able to find the pulse of the team and lead them accordingly. How long can he do it? I don't know. There's no quitting him so far that I've seen. There's no looking past the sport that I've seen from Sean Payton, and I think it's going to depend on how much success he has outside of the Drew Brees era. I think there's a part of him that's motivated to say, hey, look, I loved my time with Drew Brees, and certainly Drew Brees made him a better coach and vice versa. I'm sure Drew would acknowledge that, Sean Payton made him better. But there's some motivation of, hey, I can be successful with another quarterback, and I think that drives him quite a bit to prove that he can have success with a quarterback not named Drew Brees. And as far as longevity, look, I think he's top 5 coach in the NFL. Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Andy Reid, Sean Payton. Those are the guys I think that are the best at their their trade. And if he doesn't win another Lombardi, then it'll be a disappointment. That's why that Nola no call was a legacy changer for Sean Payton. What I mean by that is if he gets to another Super Bowl and perhaps wins it over the Patriots, because I think the Saints certainly give the Patriots a better game than the Rams do. I mean, the Rams didn't score a touchdown. If he wins another Super Bowl, then that puts him in the class of an instant first ballot Hall of Famer.
Sure.
He's not an instant first ballot Hall of Famer now. He doesn't have 2 Super Bowls. And I think he's motivated to win with another quarterback. But as far as how long he coaches, I don't know. At least another 5 years, I would anticipate.